I'm Erica.
And I'm CJ.
And you're listening to the Her Podcast.
Madison Wawryk is a somatic educator and mindfulness coach that specializes in boundaries and relaxation. Madison shares with us her entire health and spiritual journey through childhood, adolescence, and into adulthood. This one had us on the edge of our seats the entire time. From her time spent living in a small community in Nicaragua to becoming a yoga instructor in Canada, her journey is one of self-discovery, awareness, and growth. Because of the nature of the content, we do want to put a trigger warning here. Please listen with care.
Tell us a little bit about Madison growing up and what your childhood was like or experience.
Yeah, cool. So I was born on November 12th, 1991. I am the youngest and only girl in my family. So I have 3 older brothers and 12 older male cousins. And so I was kind of like a miracle. It rained pink like the day I was born. And I moved around a lot when I was a kid. So I was born in Winnipeg. My parents separated. I moved to Regina. A couple years later, moved to Saskatoon. A couple years later, moved back to Regina. And then my father dropped dead suddenly when I was 15. And I just woke up and he was there on the floor. Trigger warning, sorry, too late.
We'll put it at the beginning. It's
yeah.
Okay.
And I moved back to Saskatoon. And I've been between Saskatoon and Central America for most of my life. When I was, what they're guessing is around age 7, I developed PTSD. There was like a lot of stress and chaos around me. And I was like a really hard read as a child in like everybody's defense, because when you have a lot of stress around you and you're young, you either externalize it, which is like a lot easier to navigate, and you attack the world. And that's when you see like kids acting out in school and like fighting and all of that stuff. I wasn't like that at all. I internalized it and I started attacking myself. Like I would get sick. I would get these anxiety attacks where like I would start shaking uncontrollably and I couldn't stop. My mom could tell when I was freaked out because I would get this like huge rash on my chest and up my neck. And she'd be like, I know you're upset. I'm like, no, I'm not. And she'd be like, I can tell, like I can see it.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
You moved and your parents got divorced. I just want to clarify, did your parents like move to the same cities?
Absolutely not.
Okay, I was just like, okay, we've moved, but there was a divorce in here. So are you going back and forth between parents, or were you like with your dad? Or
I was with my mom. I would go see my dad on the holidays, and him and I had like a really close phone relationship. Like we would chit chat all the time. Like sometimes I'd call him and be like, I ate 7 bagels today, and he'd be like, maybe you shouldn't do that. Fair enough. Thank you so much for that advice. But yeah, I was really like, I had a very verbal relationship with my dad, but I lived with my mom, and my mom was like single mom, sole provider to our family. She did literally everything. She was the mom and the dad, and just like, she sacrificed everything for us. It was really nice of her. But like, yeah, I don't think that parents should have to raise children alone. Like they say it takes a village, and it genuinely does.
yeah.
Yeah, I guess we'll circle back. So
Yes,
I started having really intense anxiety attacks. I get rashes all over my body, and I started to disassociate, which I didn't know what disassociation is, and like realistically nobody did in the 90s. And so
What did that look like for you?
For me, I would like leave my house, and I had 3 CDs. I had The Beatles, Abbey Road, which was a favorite. And then I had a few, because sometimes I'd take my brothers. I think I had Big Shiny Tunes 5. And then I had Modest Mouse, Good News for People Who Love Bad News. And so there was like this swing set by my park, by my house. And I would go and sit in this park for hours, and I would just swing. And the reason why I knew I was disassociated is because I would have literal welts on the back of my legs, like bruises and cuts, because I was just like trying to like reduce my stress. Rocking is a really great way to reduce your stress.
Can I clarify? you were not getting the bruises and welts from the swing?
Yeah, I was.
That's what she's saying.
Like,
Okay,
literally.
I just was like, I just need to clarify that.
Yeah, literally my body was digging into a swing.
Okay.
And I just like, sometimes I would feel it and be like, Kate, you can't swing today. And then I would like maybe swing for like half an hour. But I was definitely going through it. And I was not really great at verbalizing it. I had internalized this idea that if I was good enough or nice enough or kind enough, that the people around me would be okay, and that they needed me to be okay. And so I just was okay. And then when I was 15, my dad died, and my mom got like this really cool job launching a radio station in Saskatoon. And so I packed up 2 bags like 3 weeks after my dad died, got on a bus, moved to Saskatoon, stayed at my cousin's house for 3 months, and just started at a new high school. And I was like, funny enough, because I had already moved so many times, I was just like, I'm just going to reinvent myself. Like, I had started working out because I was quite chubby when I was a kid. And I was like, I had realized that if you look a certain way and if you act a certain way, people treat you much better. And so I was all about that. And so I started at this new school. I remember I didn't even know my address or phone number. I just opened up the phone book in the office and was like, this is where I live.
Okay, wait, I'm sorry. You're telling this so great, but I'm like, why weren't you living with your mom if she was doing the radio station in Saskatoon and you moved to Saskatoon? Why weren't you?
We didn't have a house yet. We didn't have possession of the house, and my mom had to finish her contract with her previous job. So she stayed back for a few months, and I just stayed with my aunt and uncle. And then she came later, and my brothers actually stayed in Regina, and we moved to Saskatoon together. And so those 2 years were actually really fun, like having the radio station launched out of my house at the start. So we were just like, had all these cool people moving from like Vancouver and Toronto and all over the country to like launch this like pop station, I guess, which was really cool. But it was interesting because it was like, I was so good at masking that people couldn't really tell that I was wrong. And my mom has this parenting style that she's really like, yeah, like, I trust you, you'll figure it out, which is cool. Like, I think it's one of the reasons why I've been able to become an entrepreneur and why I like am really stubborn. But
she's not like a helicopter mom.
No, not at all. Not at all. And so like sometimes I would come home and be like, yeah, I just couldn't really cut it today. And she'd be like, that's okay. But what happened was I got mono when somewhere in high school, and then I was just sick for a few years. And I couldn't get better. And I was just like, I would just stay in my basement all the time watching TV, and just like, I would still go to work. I would still do the things that I needed to do, but I just like was not well. And I found this holistic doctor that did thermography, and they were like, that? So it's actually really cool. They take your temperature all over. Thermography. Like from head to toe, they take your temperature, and then they put you in a like air conditioned room until you get really cold. And then they take your temperature again. And then this is like a science. It's more popular in Europe. And then they scan your whole body and tell you everything that's wrong with you. And they were like, this is the worst we've ever seen somebody your age. Like, you have severe PTSD, like your lymphatic system isn't working. There's all of this stuff that's bad. And they're like, but we can fix it. And I was like, cool, let's fix it.
You're like, let's not focus on the trauma of everything you just unpacked for me.
No, they were like, you need to go to therapy. And I was like, I've tried therapy, but I could like pretty much run circles around most therapists, even when I was a kid. So
was therapy something your parents like wanted you to do growing up? Because you said already, you were like, when you were like 7, right? This is when you're like getting the rash on your chest, and your mom's like, don't lie, I can see right through you, basically. When you said that there was so much stress around you, was that because of divorce?
No. I'm not going to really speak on what was happening, just out of respect to my family.
Fair.
But it was chaos. And it was uncontrolled chaos. And my mom was really going through it, like, with all due respect. Like, she was really coping with some serious, like, obstacles. And Yeah, so I think that she did try to get me to go to therapy when I was a kid, and then it's like therapy is super expensive, and she was a single mom raising 3 kids.
Yep, absolutely.
And so I do start to go to therapy. I did not believe that I had PTSD. I've had to have several diagnoses until one day I was like, "Okay, I believe you." I just thought I was depressed, and I ended up doing a few things. So I would get this thing called endermology, which is actually for cellulite, but they would essentially vibrate this machine all over my body. And then they would put me in this sweat chamber, and I would sweat so much that actually when I would get up, the towels would be covered in this black tar. And I was just like, whoa. And the ladies were like, it's so weird. You're so little and so young to have so much illness. And I was just like, I thank you for acknowledging that.
I'm like, are you just looking at this tar and you're just like, that's weird. Anyways, thank you.
Trophy for the sickest girl.
Do I get a gold star for more tar?
Yeah. And I did end up feeling better. But I definitely didn't get my PTSD figured out. And so in my 20s, I ended up moving to this volcanic island in Nicaragua for the winter.
Why?
Cool.
Yeah. I was just really sad, and I was supposed to go to India, and I accidentally very lightly tapped 2 cars when I didn't have insurance, and I was like, oh, that was expensive, I guess I'll go somewhere else. Expensive mistake. And I Googled this place. It was a intentional community on the island of Ometepe, and then I just booked a ticket and went a couple days later, and I rocked.
By yourself?
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
had you been overseas before?
Yeah, I had been to Ecuador and Thailand. Yeah.
Okay, you're 20 at this point?
I think I was maybe 21. I don't know. Maybe
oh my gosh, and your mom's just fly, you'll be fine.
My mom was fully living her best life at that point. She had launched a radio station. She met the love of her life. They're still together. She was like, I'll be in Mexico. And I was like, go, Carly. Good for you. And so I went to this island, and it was an intentional community, and it was really a culture shock. It was just free love, hippies. When you get there, everybody looks you in the eye and hugs you and is welcome. And I was just whoa, this is a lot.
I'm putting on my sunglasses.
I'm trying to imagine Erica there.
I would handle the hugging.
Yeah.
I'd be don't look at me. I'd be crossing my eyes at everybody. I'd be no.
I feel if you were there for a while, you'd be everybody can just look into my soul. It's a really transformative place.
Well, it is about, we were just talking about this with someone, we had Jody Carrington on, and she was talking about acknowledging people.
Yeah.
Right. And it is, I think this is a thing that we don't do. Even now I'm looking in your eyes, and I'm I gotta look over here a little bit.
Yeah.
So it is a piece of culture that I think we don't have as much anymore. We're looking at our phones a lot more than each other. Right. So sorry, keep going.
Honestly, I think that's cool though. I in some indigenous communities, it's actually very disrespectful to look someone in the eye. And you'll often see people look down because a lot of people believe that's the window to your soul. And if somebody's I don't want to look you in the eye, that's their boundary, right? So I respect that. We don't have to make eye contact if you don't want to.
I'll just turn to.
I will not look at Erica.
It's fine. We'll just talk like this now. The boundary workbook. The boundary workbook.
Yeah.
I'm teasing you.
Yes.
No, totally.
You
fine.
can look at me. It's fine.
Anyways, okay, so you go to this community.
I go to this community. The first night was chaos. Even getting there was chaos. I met this Italian guy on the boat, the ferry there, and he's like, "I'll help you get there." And I was like, "Thank you, Francesco." And we get there, and they just finished a tantra workshop, and everybody is elated and just this really high energy. And then they're yeah, it's Friday night, so we always have a party on Friday night, and we take cacao. And I'm just literally sussing it out, what is going on here? And they're we don't have a tent for you, so you're gonna just sleep above the kitchen. And I was okay, yeah, sure. So I'm eating this hippie food, and I eat these cacao balls, and we're kind of dancing. And I was a hardcore cigarette smoker at the time. And I had heard that we couldn't smoke cigarettes there, and I was this will be good for me. And then they're we smoke cigarettes on Fridays anywhere, and I was but they have to be pre-rolled organic tobacco. And I was sure, like whatever.
Cigarette, I'm in.
Yeah. And so everybody, all of a sudden the party got really weird, and it seemed like everybody was on drugs. And like, I was just like, I'm gonna have to excuse myself. So I like climb up this ladder in this like open face like kitchen made of like cob, and I'm just like laying with my backpack, and these people underneath me are like yelling and like partying and have a good time, and I was just like, hey, like it would be like so great if I could just, you know, like go to sleep. And this person was like, I remember it was this like really sweet German man who I ended up becoming friends with, but he just yelled something back at me, and I was like, okay. So I was just like huddled in a ball crying, and all I could hear was screaming all night, and like just screaming. And I was just like, what is going on? Apparently what happened was, without permission, a bunch of people decided to take acid. And then this man fell down the side of the volcano and just got head to toe covered in bug bites, and like was just screaming all night in pain. And I woke up and I put on my backpack and I went to the owners of this like intentional community, and I was like, thank you so much for having me. I'm gonna go.
You're like, bye.
Yeah, I was like, I brought you this maple syrup from Canada, like please enjoy. I didn't know they didn't do GMOs there. And they were like, why are you leaving? And I was like, because you all take acid. And I'm like, what is it? And I just like was having like a full-on breakdown. And the like founder, who's this really interesting woman, like took me up to their house and like made me tea. And they said like, what happened last night is like not typical of this place. Like we don't take drugs without permission. I'm not going to say that we don't take plant medicines here, but it's like an intentional thing, and everything is cleared. And like this is unusual, and those people are all being asked to leave, and like I'm really sorry that this was your experience, but why don't you stay the weekend and like just see how it vibes? Because I was there to take a shamanic healing training with like my predominant meditation teacher, Vinod. Shout out Vinod. And so I stayed, and I ended up taking this meditation training. And it really changed my life. I was like, meditation is great. And I ended up living in a tent in the jungle, like this jungleless island, for like 3 months.
Whoa.
And I was like, this is fantastic. So being in nature was really healing. It was like a smorgasbord of people from all over the country. And because I was a smoker, I spent most of the time in this like exiled little corner of the jungle, just like smoking cigarettes in a hammock with like this Israeli lady named Gramia, who had done like a lot of personal work. And she would just always like every time we'd have cigarettes, it would just be like therapy. She would be like, why do you feel those emotions? Are they true? And I would just be like, this is so much. And I ended up getting lice when I was there. So I shaved my head, and my friend Gramia shaved her head with me.
Okay. You have obviously like friends and family back home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like so much is happening right now.
Literally,
Yeah,
like,
this is nothing.
I'm just like two things. Like
Yeah.
one, either when you come back home, are they like, whoa, like what's going on with you? Or are you like posting any of this? Or because it's like in the middle of the jungle, like no one knows that all of this stuff is happening?
I feel like I called my mom and I was like, I shaved my head and I'm ugly. Like, because I had like tried to like, I don't really have a lot of game when it comes to dating. And I'd like tried to like talk to this guy, like maybe get some kisses. And he was just like, no. And I was like, like the worst thing to happen when you shave off all your hair. And so they kind of like knew what was up, and I'm sure they were seeing pictures on Facebook, but my family is like, I've always just kind of been an outlier. Like I'm the only girl. So they were always like, what's happening here anyway? And I think my brothers were my brothers verbatim were just like, you're lucky, you're pretty. And I was like, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, ladies, I need to introduce you to someone that I know is going to have a positive impact on your life in 2024. Meet my friend Marie Barker. You may recognize her name from episode 44. We got to chat with Marie on all things wellness, and it was so good. So make sure to listen to that one after this. Marie is a high-spirited wellness advisor and mindfulness expert who is super passionate about helping women get out of their heads and into their bodies through simple mind-body practices like breathwork, movement, journaling, and cyclical living. I've had the opportunity to sit in on a number of classes with her, and they are not only super fun, but I always feel this huge sense of refreshment afterwards. If you want to experience Marie and all her creative goodness, then listen up. She's created a library of wellness tools available at mariebarkerwellness.com for you to try. One of my personal favorites is her Know Your Flow field guide. This is like the instruction manual we all should have been given as a preteen. It teaches you how to eat, move, supplement, and work out according to each of the 4 phases of your cycle. It's an incredibly powerful biohacking practice that can help you rebalance your hormones, skin, moods, digestion, motivation, weight fluctuation, and so much more. I honestly think everyone needs this guide. I've been using it for the past little while, and it's been a game changer for me, especially when it comes to my fitness. I love knowing what workouts are actually going to benefit me most during each phase of my cycle. To grab a copy of the field guide, head to mariebarkerwellness.com/knowyourflow field guide. And while you're at it, download her free Feeling Overwhelmed meditation and reflection journal prompts. Marie offers one-on-one personal wellness sessions, group programs, and more if you're looking to get to know her a bit better. If you want to get a dose of Marie right away, you can find her on Instagram at Marie Barker Wellness. And again, visit her website, mariebarkerwellness.com, for tons of amazing resources dedicated to improving your health and wellness. Get to know yourself better in 2024 with the Know Your Flow field guide today. Once again, head on over to Instagram at Marie Barker Wellness to check out what Marie's been up to. We know you're not going to regret it. She is the best. And make sure to download all of the freebies she has to offer at mariebarkerwellness.com.
So I decided that I wanted to just have like a more simple, happy life. I had been working as like a nightclub and bottle service waitress, and I was really good at I was great at modifying my personality.
Like back when you came home?
No, before that. I was super good at modifying my personality to
like adapting to your environment.
Yeah, it would just be whatever people wanted. I had like a weird obsession with being symmetrical. And so like I would do my makeup and my hair so it was symmetrical. I would like literally wear clothing that would make me like, I had read this book called Faces when I was a kid, all about beauty and what people found was beautiful. Sorry, tap the table.
That's okay, you're fine.
And I was like, this is good information to have if I can like modify myself to what would benefit me the most, then I can be happy and people will like me, which is like what I really wanted when I was a kid. And then I obviously was not finding fulfillment in that. So when I shaved my head, I came back and I was like, okay, I need to do something different. So I became a baker. Yeah, just randomly.
Non-GMO organic baker or what?
Gluten-free. Yeah, okay. Shout out Griffin Takeaway.
So good.
So good.
Yeah, I just got introduced to that actually.
Mm-hmm.
Best people. I love that place. And so I had worked there for a couple years and I was really enjoying it. They were super nice. They'd let me go back to Nicaragua in the winters. And I just was like, I was still really disassociated and I was still smoking pot all the time. And one day I got in this war with my weird middle-aged roommate. We're going to call him Larry. And Larry like moved in when I was in Nicaragua. He's supposed to be a sublet and he got in there and I was like not cool with this. And I kept having conversations. By the way, we're going to talk about boundaries today. All of this is just to show you that I had the worst boundaries out of like anyone on the planet. And so I was like, him and I got in this turf war over my house and he was like trying to get my lease. And I've literally lived in my house for over 10 years now. And he and I were just like, we had like just the wildest, like I would wet his toothbrush. I would never do anything to someone's toothbrush, but I would wet his toothbrush in the sink and be like, I'm going to make him think
it's gone somewhere.
Yeah. And like he would, and so when
Erica's taking notes for Nick. She's like, I'll wet your toothbrush. Where was it?
Some psychological torment.
Warfare.
Do not do this.
We don't use Facebook to commute anymore. Now we just wet each other's toothbrush to mess with each other.
Yeah, we'll go over some of these skills in the course, the communication stuff, moving forward. But yeah, so I got this war with this man named Larry, and he essentially he called my uncle is my landlord, and my uncle is also like pretty much my dad, or he plays the father role in my life, and said like that I had been smoking pot in the house, which is like cardinal sin in my family. And I was just like, oh, like I was so like, I didn't know what to do. I was choked. And my uncle like rolls up to my house, like 6 pamphlets deep, takes me to Tim Hortons, and he's like, I'm worried about you. Like, you are going down a bad road. And I was like, I know, I'm struggling. And he was like, do something with your life. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll take a yoga teacher training. I started doing yoga when I was 15. Well, actually a lot younger. I got a book when I was 4, and then I kind of got into it when I was 12, but I really got into it when I was 15 and started doing it almost every day. So I was like, okay, I'll take this yoga teacher training. It'll keep me distracted, and I'll just kind of like do that. And so I took a yoga teacher training, and then it was really interesting. I would like to say that I beat my vice. I didn't. It took me a few years after that. But I became a yoga teacher, and it was nice because I could teach yoga and I could travel. And so I was still going back and forth to Nicaragua.
To the same community?
No.
Okay.
What? Absolutely not.
Okay.
I was like,
I actually moved to a place called San Juan del Sur, which I loved. And I kept working on ego projects, but my meditation teacher, Vinod, and his wife, Tara, and their daughter, Ariel, had moved to San Juan del Sur, like the second time I was at the commune. And they're like, that's where we're living now. And I was like, cool, I'm going to come like hang out with you guys. And they're like, we'll rent the apartment underneath us. And I was like, sounds good. See you soon. And so I would just live under them. And then they bought a house, and I just moved back, and I would visit, and they're just like, they very much were my second family. And so when I was in, I guess, I can't remember what year, I think it was 2018, I had returned, and I had decided to leave like a boyfriend that I had deeply loved, because I was just like, I'm a traveler. Like this is just who I am. Like this is a non-negotiable for me. And if you can't handle me being gone for a few months, like, sorry, like it's not going to work out. But I was quite sad about that. And I was working at a surf camp. And when I was there, essentially these protests broke out, and I think over the next few months, like over 500 people were murdered. And there was like these really like horrific demonstrations where they would like kill people in the streets, and they
like locals, or was this like expats?
Locals. And so it was like, it started by some students protesting a tax increase to pensions. And it's like, Nicaragua is a very poor country. And I'm not saying that there's not like successful people there, but like their GDP is low. And one thing I love about like Central America in general is like they go to the streets. They're like, no, we are going to fix this now. And so essentially what happened was, I think, an attempt for a revolution that didn't actually work out, but there was like a lot of violence happening about 3.5 hours away from me. And it was getting closer, and I was working at a surf camp at the time as like a entertainment host. So my job was just like vibes, you know what I mean? I'd like plan the week, and then I'd be like, and here, let's go to Taco Tuesday, let's go surfing, let's do these things, your yoga classes at this time. But like it was a 24-hour job. And the only way I knew it was going on was it was on the internet. And so I would be like looking at my phone, like watching people get murdered. And then I would be like on a beach, and these people would be like, can you take pictures of me in front of the sunset? And I'd be like, yeah, for sure. Like, let's have a great time. And it was really like very traumatizing for me. And it was traumatizing because like my friends would come to work and be like, my bus was shot at today. And I'd be like, I'm so sorry for you. Like, and it's always like, it's very humbling, and it made me very grateful to be Canadian and to know that I could just buy a ticket and leave anytime. And at the time I was like, I don't know if this is going to last, if this isn't going to last, like what's happening here. And I remember like I did yoga every day. And so I was up in this like beautiful yoga studio. My friend Rebecca Arvelo had like designed and built this resort. And I was always like, I loved being in the studio that she built. And I remember laying there in this little ball and just shaking uncontrollably like I used to do when I was a kid. And it was almost like my soul had left my body. Like I was just like looking down at myself and being like, she's not okay. And I decided like, okay, I'm going to go home. And so I went and talked to my meditation teacher and I was like, hey, can you pick me up? I'm going to quit my job. And he was like, good for you. You hated that place. And I was like, thanks, Vinod. I appreciate the support. And I called my friend Peter and I was like, hey man, can I like live with you for a while? And he had like a beautiful, like little house on a like beautiful resort with a butterfly sanctuary yoga studio.
As one does,
you know, why not? And like also he had armed guards and I was like into that. And so I went and stayed with him for a few weeks until I could afford a ticket home. And then I flew home. And it was really like my PTSD went from PTSD to complex PTSD. And it was like my entire paradigm had shifted. I had already been through most of the like capital T traumas that people had gone through. And it's like, listen, we could do 10 podcasts on the chaos that is my life, but we don't have time. This isn't even supposed to be about me. This is supposed to be about the course and tips on boundaries. But I got home and I was just like so shell shocked that all I could do was like just take care of myself. I like wasn't really trying to work that much. I went and worked for my brother in BC for a few weeks, just helping him with his business. And then I flew home because I was like, no, I have to be around family. I knew I needed community. And I got a job working as a barista. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do my yoga thing and I'm going to do this stuff. And I had already been teaching yoga for a few years out of my like home studio, which I love. And then I started like teaching public classes. And it was this interesting thing because I have always had a skill that I can be completely anxious. I can be having a full anxiety attack. And like, unless you can see my chest, like it's probably rashy right now. You never know. And so
good at masking.
Yeah. Killer at masking. And so I was like, my PTSD was getting more complex and I had met this person that seemed like they really wanted to help me. And they were very supportive. They had offered to give me free sessions, like free healing sessions, and like really encouraged me to do trainings and stuff. And I was like, I remember when I first met this person, I was very clear, like I did not like them, like the vibe. I was just like, no, I'm not into it, not mathing here. But I also like didn't really have an option to not be around them because it was tied to my income. And so I was in like a friendship for about a year that I was getting progressively more anxious. And the thing is that I found a lot of safety within spirituality and the spiritual community. And I, at this point, still thought that all people were good people inherently. I don't think that anymore. And essentially, like something happened in one treatment where I was like laying there and there was a needle in my head and it was really hurting me.
Because you were having acupuncture?
I was having acupuncture.
Yes.
Yeah.
You didn't just have a needle in your head. Thank you.
And I was in a treatment and there was a needle in my head and it was really hurting me. And I was like, I think I need this out. And they had said, like, are you sure that you need this out? Because it's a really important meridian point and all of this stuff. And I'm such a people pleaser. I was like, no, maybe just take it. Like, maybe I would like it out unless you think it's really important, you know? And then I remember they had put it back in and it still hurt. But then they started asking me questions about my workplace. And it was like, I felt like I couldn't move. And I left, and I left afterwards, and I was like, I've been through some pretty serious stuff in my life, so that didn't even clock as anything serious. And I actually ended up just booking a trip to Colombia, and I had a great time in Colombia, and I got back, and my relationship had gotten like, it just started to like really get quite blurry. And this individual would ask me like, when was I getting my period? Who was I dating? I need to spend more time with you because you're my best friend and I feel like we're really close friends. And I had this very weird situation where it was like I needed to make money. And so I will happily mask to like keep making my money. And I also, where I worked, had like a really good, was really good for me to get new clients to my private practice. And so my checks and balances, they seemed to be balancing, but I was getting more and more stressed out, and I would talk to them about it, and I'd be like, hey, like when you're around, I'm having anxiety attacks. And they'd be like, no, you're not. And I'd be like, nah, yeah, but it's just really hard to tell with me. And they'd be like, no, you're not. I know what anxiety attacks are. And then it changed to, I know you're having anxiety because we're so spiritually connected that when I have anxiety, when you have anxiety, I feel it.
Ooh.
And I was just like, it was such a weird situation, and I didn't realize it, but I was actually becoming very isolated from the people around me. This person would be at my workplace for like 6 out of the 8 hours of the day. And I was just like, my goal was to save up a certain sum of money and just get back to Nicaragua. And I was doing coaching and teaching manifesting programs at that time, and I was becoming like a very, very successful yoga teacher. And so I remember it was just this one day that I was having a lot of pain. I had started getting these somatic symptoms. After the uprising in Nicaragua, I had this horrific pain in my hip, which it's a shock reaction in the psoas. And then I started getting this intense shoulder pain, and I was doing everything. I was doing yoga every day. I was taking the right supplements. I was doing breath work, meditation, like CBD, everything that you could do, and it just wasn't working. So I was really desperate, and I was like, I'll take the help. I'll keep coming for treatments. And just I remember being in this treatment and being totally just laying on my belly and having needles all through my body. And I had asked ahead of time, like, I just want to be here. I want the heater on. I want the needles in. And I just kind of want to just vibe it out because I'm good at meditation. I know how to calm my own system. And what happened was different when I got there. They were like pretty insistent on me taking psychedelic drugs. And I wish I said no. I said yes. It wasn't like a super high dose, but like, don't do that. If you're listening at home, don't do that. Like, learn from my mistakes. And I was just so bad at saying yes when I wanted to say no. And then in the treatment, they had decided to like tell me my past life, like just like make up this past life thing for me and tell me that I was incapable of love and all of this stuff. And I was just laying there, and I was like, I could feel the anger like boiling in me, but it was this really weird somatic experience where I was like, I felt completely disassociated. I couldn't even really feel what was happening in my body. I just was like, I'm not okay. And I got up and said, thank you so much. I'm going to go. And they actually drove me home and was like, did you like that? And I was like, yeah, sure.
Walks in the door. No.
Yeah. I literally I got home. I was talking to my like super sweet roommate, and I was like, this happened and I didn't like it. And they were like, yeah, that sounds pretty ick. And I was like, it was ick. And then I was like, and I have to go back to work in 2 days. And then I had rolling anxiety attacks for several days, to the point that I called another friend in Nicaragua. I was like, this was my experience. And they're like, well, talk to the person. Like, don't just hold it in. And so I did. And what I got was like, it was my fault, and it was a spiritual truth. And that like, you know, it was what their spirit guides had told them to say. And I was just like I inherently was like, fuck this person. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on here, but yeah, I truly was like, fuck this person. And I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be a really good spiritual person. I'm going to forgive them, which you should never do. You have to go through your emotions before you forgive somebody. And so I did, and I tried to stay at this job, and I stayed for 2 more weeks. And I just literally was like, I quit. I can't do this anymore. Like, I feel terrible. And this whole time, like, I was being told, like, you're so lucky to have this job. You're so lucky to make $12 an hour. You're so lucky that you get to be here. And I would be like, I feel like I'm more valuable than this. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like you get a lot for, like, the juice you're getting is a lot more than I am. And I quit my job. The next month, I made triple what I made working there, just working for myself.
So was this a catalyst then to change?
Yeah.
Like,
so,
are we at sort of like the
yeah. So now we're getting to the boundary
boiling
work. Yeah.
point?
Yeah. And so when I got there, so I went through a few experiences between then and now. Somebody walked into my house the next month while I was sleeping and tried to come in my room. And it was like, I'm not sure if you have seen The Mummy. I was, I'll get back to that. So I had been teaching a manifesting course, and then I was also watching this show on Netflix about this girl who was sexually assaulted, but they left no evidence. And those two things shouldn't be combined. If you're doing a lot of manifesting work, don't watch crime documentaries. And anyway, so I heard these footsteps to my room, and I was like literally like a Nox in a moon in The Mummy. I was just like, what is happening? And they turned around and walked out of my house. I went back to sleep. My roommate at the time, like, you know, she liked to get it. So I just was like, oh, I must have been one of her gentleman suitors. And I talked to her.
I was like, she likes to get it. Like, she went after him.
Yeah,
No, I understand.
Yeah. And so the next day, I remember even joking at my yoga class, being like, yeah, my roommate's man woke me up, and everybody's laughing. And I talked to her and I said, hey, just so you know, like, your gentleman suitor woke me up last night. And she was like, I thought that was your gentleman suitor. And I was like, no, sir. And I remember even like, I have a fight response also. And so as soon as I came out of freeze, I like got up and I looked, and there's like these wet footsteps leading into my room because it's the middle of winter. And I was like, this isn't okay. I'm not okay. And so I go to Nicaragua. I'm not sure if you guys have noticed this, but that's what I do.
I'm like, I'm noticing
happens.
a bit of like,
a pattern.
I'm going to get on a plane.
Yeah.
I'm not doing good. Plane.
Nicaragua.
Which it's important to like find safe spaces. And that for me is a safe space. It takes away a lot of my stress. I can afford to live. And then I got really sick because COVID. And then the country was locking down, and it was the COVID pandemic. And when I got back, my PTSD was like, I was actually thriving at the start of the pandemic because everybody else was freaking out. And I was like, this feels like my childhood. Like, I feel great. Like, I'm just going for walks, I'm baking. And then I came home one day, and there was like a made up written note to saying like, hey, since I got sexually assaulted, like, I haven't felt safe. And like, you know, knowing you has made me feel a lot better and all of this stuff. And I was just reading this note and left in my mailbox, and I was like, what is this? And then I looked, and it said, Dear John. And then I flipped it over, and then it said, from Maddie. And I was like, I didn't write this note. And then there was another note saying like, hey, I found this in my car, and I just like wanted you to, I figured it was you, and I wanted you to know that I found it and that it's safe, and I'm going to respect your boundary. And I was like, respect my boundaries? By coming to my house, by like leaving notes in my mailbox, like coming to my house when I'm sleeping, like that is not respecting a human's boundaries. I can't prove that was the person that walked into my house.
I was like about to be like, whoa.
Yeah, I can't prove that. And so I was looking back at my journals, and I was like looking back at my life, and I was like, I say yes a lot when I want to say no. And I'm not actually like, if someone that's teaching manifesting and teaching yoga and teaching people to calm down, I don't feel calm. Like, I don't feel good at all. And I had this like horrific pain in my body to the point that I couldn't do yoga anymore. And so I found this Somatic video on a website that I subscribe to. And it was the first thing that took my pain away in like a really long time. And so I decided to do a somatic teacher training. And I started doing these somatic movements, and they're these very, very tiny movements. They're developed by an Israeli scientist called Moshe Feldenkrais, and then adapted by an American doctor named Thomas Hanna. and they're movements that you learn in sequence from when you are a child. And essentially there's this idea that you get this thing called sensory motor amnesia, and it's when your sensory motor system, so your sensing and feeling system, which is connected to your nervous system, shuts down things in your body and doesn't move them. And that's how we get like functional pain, or what I call it is ghost pain, where it's like you're going for x-rays, nothing's showing up, you're going to the doctors, everything's fine, but something's frozen in your body. And so I spent a year and a half like unfreezing my body and going through all of these memories of like assaults that I had been through, and like horrible relationships, and like understanding all of these memories that I had suppressed, and sort of balancing out my system. But I was still feeling really, really stressed. And I was like, hey, like, I'm gonna like find a different therapist. So I found my wonderful therapist who I see now, and she's a somatic breath therapist. Shout out Lisa Vikush, LV. And she read my breath, and she said, you have behavioral hypercapnia. And I said, great, another thing to just like add to the list.
Wonderful. We'll add that to the rap sheet.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. You feel me. I feel seen. Yeah, and she was like, yeah, essentially you're so stressed because your body's storing carbon dioxide and you're low grade suffocating all the time. And I was like, lol, like I'm such a fraud. I literally teach breathing workshops.
And I'm suffocating.
That is like super, like the irony of it, right? It's just
so ironic.
It's like that song, isn't it ironic? It's like, I'm not laughing at you.
Yeah.
I'm like, that is just
no, please laugh at
like,
me.
I'm just like, wow.
Actually, ironically, when they were doing the breathing scans, the only time that I was breathing correctly was when I was laughing.
Oh,
yeah, that was the only time.
Have you listened to episode 62 yet? Okay, finish up this one, then go back to that one, because I promise you don't want to miss listening to Jessica Jansen and all her goodness. I have had the opportunity to not only sit and have casual conversations with Jess, but I've also had the opportunity to hear her speak at events. And my gosh, she never disappoints. Her energy and vibes are unmatched. I swear every time I get to hear her, I just soak in all her wisdom on all things life and business. Now, pay attention. If you're feeling stuck in your life, either professionally or personally, then this next part is for you. Because not only is Jessica a killer public speaker and author, but she's also a coach who specializes in helping individuals get unstuck, reach new levels, and build a life of abundant joy. Sign me up, please. If you're looking to build new, healthy habits, reframe perspectives, and externally process in a safe environment with zero judgment, this is for you. Jessica comes to the table with high energy, tons of joy, and absolutely no BS. I can personally say that having a coach has had a massive impact on my life, and it's something both CJ and I value and always recommend, especially when you're feeling stuck. Because Jess is so great and wants you to make the most out of life, she's offering her listeners an exclusive discount on her coaching program. Simply mention our podcast when booking in to receive 10% off any 3 or 6 month coaching package. If you're ready to get more out of the life that you're living and want to better manage the roadblocks and hurdles that life is throwing your way, Jessica's one-on-one coaching is for you. It's specifically set up to give you the momentum that you want and need. You can book in for a free discovery call with Jessica through her website, which is www.jessicajansen.ca, or connect with her through Instagram at the Jessica Jansen. And don't forget to mention the Her podcast when booking in for 10% off your 3 or 6 month coaching program. I promise you won't regret it.
Okay.
And so I started doing this breathing work. And well, first, it's connected to emotional suppression. Those two things really come hand in hand. And so essentially my nervous system and my body couldn't heal because it wasn't getting enough oxygen. And so at this point I had been going to the mountains to meditate silently for like weeks at a time. So I went to the mountains and I brought a bat and I just spent a week just hitting things with a bat, which is
For 2 seconds, I was like, did you bring a pet bat? Is where my mind went.
I'm just not going to be surprised by anything. And I say that in the most respectful
That's
way.
what I'm saying. I was like, cool. She brought a bat. Why?
Like,
brought a bat.
Yeah, I understand.
This is her sidekick.
Physical bat.
I actually ate a bat once, but we can talk about that at another
Bat
time.
soup?
I regret it.
Yeah.
Do not
I
recommend.
regret a lot of things I've done. Yeah. But not really, because it's all lessons. But yes, I went to the forest with a bat, and I just started being like, okay, I have to feel my feelings, and I have to like take a look at what I have been lying to myself about. And what I realized was that I had been really lying to myself about the boundaries that I had in my life. Like, I thought that I was a person that had good boundaries, but I had a really hard time differentiating love from abuse, to the point that I couldn't really detect abuse when it was happening. I would be like, yeah, but they're a nice guy, or they're a nice person, or, you know, they just, like, somebody could punch me in the face and I would be like, is your hand okay? Like, it seems like you're really dysregulated right now. Like, can we unpack that? Like, it just had terrible boundaries, and I was overly empathetic. And it was to the point that it was like, I would cater to family members, to friendships, to people, not so much to my clients. We have like a very, very clear boundaries. That's one thing that I love about my work. But I would cater to their needs to the point that I would be like literally silently killing myself. And I was like, we're not doing this anymore. Yeah. And at this point, I had been trying to make this course because I knew I needed to learn about breathing, I knew I needed to learn about boundaries. And so I was making notes and trying to figure out how to do this framework around boundaries. And so I set very clear boundaries with people. I was like, if I say no, it's a no. I'm not going to show up. If I'm tired, if I need to rest, I will rest. And like, sometimes when people are really like, if somebody needed to be confrontational with me, I would just be like, yeah, like, could you send me a note? Because I just can't handle this today. I'm sorry. Or just knowing that I needed some space afterwards. But my boundaries have gotten really different. And a big part of that in the last couple of years as I've been doing this work is that I had to completely reframe, like, what is conflict and what is abuse. And I had to reframe what is love and what is just relation, you know? And those were things that I had taught myself from such an early age, that you have to modify yourself and adapt to other people's needs in order to be loved, to the point that I was genuinely killing myself. And so now here we are on a podcast.
Well, and it's so interesting because I think we've talked about this on a podcast. I think I was referring to Gabor Mate.
Love Gabor Mate.
I always butcher his name. But you know, even going back to like in childhood, how we modify ourselves, right? Often from an early age because of safety or like relationship or like, you know, prime like things that we need, food, water, shelter, relationship, and how that can sort of play forward into adulthood. And we've carried those things forward and they actually no longer serve us, right? But we were doing that to stay what we thought was safe in the moment, right? As children. So yeah, I'm curious then. Okay, so we've gotten to this point where we have heard a bit about your history and what has brought you here. How did you really start to change that for yourself?
Yeah, because I think it's one thing to be like, I'm gonna set boundaries.
Yes,
and
yeah.
it's another thing to like set the boundary, and then it's another layer to like keep your boundary.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just as simple as being like, I think personally that it's not as simple as just being like, okay, I'm going to do it and now it's fine and we're all good. And
well, because then I think more people would do it.
Well, this is the thing. They're very hard to set
Right?
and keep and not modify, I think, when you're not in a headspace of healing or like ready to maybe make those changes fully.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So what I had to do was, one, figure out what my values were, which was good because I was actually doing business coaching anyway. And so I figured out what my values were. And then I figured out what I thought my boundaries were and what I needed them to be happy. And then I had to actually take a look at my limiting beliefs and patterns. So as we've clearly unpacked here, I believe
I love the self-aware.
Yeah. I believed that I had to be nice to be loved, or that I had to sacrifice myself to be loved. Now, that's really common in children that have chaotic childhoods, because they just want to be loved and they will accommodate to that. Now, as an adult, that wasn't working for me. Like, I was holding myself back, and I was actually like really appeasing people that didn't have my best interest in mind. And so I had to retrain that. I had to get out of a state of nervous system exhaustion, because it left me in hypervigilance. So instead of being in the moment, I was never present.
Was that just like a whole lot of rest?
Yeah, a lot of silent meditation, a lot of rest. I've obviously been doing a ton of breath work.
Yeah, no more carbon dioxide.
No more carbon dioxide. Yeah. Yoga Nidra was super helpful for me. And then actual somatic body work.
Yep.
And so those were my first things. And then I had to start rewiring my limiting beliefs. So I really do believe in affirmations if you do what you're saying in your affirmations. So I used to, like, every day when I would pray with my mala beads, I would say, I'm a sacred being. I treat myself with love and respect. And I would repeat that to myself. And then everywhere I would go, I would be like, man, I am not treating myself as a sacred being. I am not treating myself with love and respect. And then all of a sudden I could see all these places in my life where the math was not mathing. And so I did some work. I learned how to rewire limiting beliefs. So we go through all of these steps in this course. And then I had to learn how to process grief, right? Because I think the reason why we all get stuck in the same patterns, in the same habits, is because we refuse to feel what we need to feel. We refuse to close the cycle. And I would refuse to close to the cycle because I didn't believe that loss was cyclical.
What cycle?
A cycle of grief, right? Okay. And so you get enough, like you set a boundary, right? So say you guys set a boundary and said, hey, we wanted this on the podcast. You ended up ranting about yourself for an hour. We're not going to do the podcast. We're not going to post it.
That is not going to happen. Yeah. I want to be very clear. Yeah. We've really liked hearing your story.
It's a possibility, right? And then I could leave, and there are like two options. Now, my natural option is like, okay, whatever, it was nice. Like, thank you so much for the water and the chocolate. Like, this is so nice. Or I could be really mad, and I could be mad for years and say, CJ and Erica, they're mean girls. They tricked me.
Come up with a narrative.
Look like a fool. And I would get stuck in these boxes. They're called self-justification boxes. And we go through this in the course. And instead of just like feeling like, man, I'm really sad. Like, I thought we were friends. I thought that maybe they would want to let me share my story. If I didn't go through that grief, if I didn't feel the sadness or the disappointment, I would just hold on to it. And then I would probably end up going on another podcast and be like, you know what happened in this last podcast? And then we transfer and we project our experiences onto the next thing. And that's why we don't have boundaries. And so, you can't have boundaries if you don't respect other people's boundaries. And so grief is such an important part of self-actualization, because at some point in your life, if you're always getting sick, if everybody around you is an asshole, if you're always in shitty jobs, if you're always in shitty relationships, like, the call's coming from inside the house, you have to like take a look at yourself and be like,
I really like that. The call's coming from inside the house.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. I think a lot of people don't do that. I think we often say it is interesting how many times you hear someone, here, and you're like, the common denominator, right? Like, this seems to be a theme. And it's hard to look inward. It really is. It's easier to say this is someone else's problem.
Yeah.
Right. That is actually 100% easier to say this is actually not me, not my problem, so that I don't have to own it.
Yeah.
Right. I'm curious on what you think. Two questions come to mind. I always like to hear how people would like define boundaries. Yeah. Like how you would define it or how you would explain it to others. And also I'm curious on what you find is like the biggest hurdle for people to set boundaries? So I realize I asked 2 questions and we try not to do that because it's like hard to keep track of. So the first one
But
is,
you're pretty smart.
But you're pretty
I think you
smart.
can do it.
I feel like you've got
Thank
this.
you so much.
I feel like you've got this.
So I always say that boundaries are bridges. They're not barriers, right? So my boundaries are the bridges that you have to follow the path of this bridge if you want to have access to me.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. And a lot of people say boundaries are barriers. Like, you can't talk to me that way. You can talk to me that way, but you just don't get access to me. I can't change your behavior. And I think that is the reason why people don't correctly set boundaries, is boundaries are contracts that you have with yourself. And the behavior that you will allow yourself to tolerate, whereas most people, when they think they're setting boundaries, but they're just policing others, you know?
Yeah, my brain is going like this because that is very common. I think what I'm seeing is people, and we've talked about this before with Ashley Breland too, about, I said I struggle with boundaries when other people set them with me, not because I don't respect people and I don't love people, but they've always felt like this wall. And then I'm like, well, I can't get through a wall.
Hello. You're like, can we talk about
Are
this?
we allowed to be, you know? And so I think even the visual of a bridge is like really beautiful because it is guided.
Yeah.
It is guided. It's like, you want to get across this river. This is the way you get there.
But it still allows for open.
But it still allows for
compared to a barrier, right? Where it feels like, no, this is full stop.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, boundaries are to keep people in. They're not to keep people out, right? And everybody has a different level of tolerance. When people like refer to people as snowflakes, I am a snowflake. You know what I mean? I melt. I am very sensitive, and I need the people around me to accommodate to that sensitivity. Like, if it's too much for you, I understand, but like, that's who I am authentically. Like, I'm a highly sensitive person. And so I have to be like mindful of who I allow to have access to me. And one thing that we do with boundaries is we will usually try to change ourselves to accommodate other people. And a big problem is you stay in situations that are not good for you because it's like, this is a hurdle that I need to go over. And it's like, no, just leave. Just leave. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, instead of I'm picturing like a literal race with like hurdles. I'm like, you can actually just step off the track if you need. You don't have to do that.
Yeah.
What was your second question?
My second question was, what do you think is the biggest hurdle with people setting boundaries, which maybe you answered, but I don't know if you have more like thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that something that we go over in the course a lot, especially before setting boundaries, is the expectations that we have for others. Now, there are some people that you would love to have boundaries with, but your boundaries are going to be different. When you have kids, like, you have to have strong boundaries, but you also have to be able to negotiate and attune yourself to emotions, right? And there are some people that are so traumatized or emotionally immature that if you set a boundary, it can't even be a conversation. I could say, when you did this, it made me feel this way. And all they would hear is, you're a terrible person and nobody loves you. And it's like, I didn't say that. And so when it comes to setting boundaries, you have to choose your language. But you also have to understand the person that you're talking to and pay attention to the information that you're getting. If I set a boundary with someone and then they don't follow it, that's really good information to have. I can either choose to negotiate my boundary or I can choose to end or modify the relationship accordingly. But if I try to police that person or change them, I am just enmeshing myself in a cycle of unhappiness. And that's usually when we come into behaviors that are self-justifying, and it's more of a war and less of a negotiation of, this is the life that I want. I would love for you to be part of it. Could you not curse at me? You know what I mean? Or whatever your boundary would like to be.
How do you advise, even through your boundary, like going through a conversation where you're like, it's time to leave this relationship because I've negotiated A through Z, right? Like, I have tried to find a way to make this relationship work and it's not working. Do you have any easy, tangible I don't want to say tips, but like tools for individuals who might be like, how do I have a conversation that exits a relationship?
Well, first of all, you don't have to. If somebody, like, usually we don't set boundaries with super nice people. And so if somebody is very abusive to you, you don't have to let them know. You can just continue on with your life. Now, I don't recommend ghosting. But if it's a relationship that you've worked and like given it a very long time, you can just say like, hey, this isn't working. Or it can be as simple as, actually, you can just say, I'm not available. Thank you so much for the invitation, but I can't come. No is a full sentence. And something that we do in the course is the second half of the course is first learning transference, projection, and learning how to get out of the boxes of self-justification. So before you go into setting boundaries, you're not coming in hot, going for a fight. You're going for a negotiation. And then we talk about language. When you're setting a boundary with someone, you're not going to use the word you, your, you did this. You're going to say, this is the behavior. I feel this way. This is what I need. Before you go in, you want to know what your outcome is. And if it is an ultimatum, like I'm going to go, there is that. You also need to know what your negotiation is. For example, like if I'm negotiating a boundary with my roommate, like I expected you to do this, and this cleaning. And she goes, oh, I'm sorry, I've been going through something. It's not that time. I say, this is the cost of a maid service. Can you split the cost? And then it's like, she doesn't have to move out. I don't have to move out. We brought in a third party to fix this problem. Like you can negotiate a boundary. But the other thing that comes with this course is a guidebook for grief. We go through every emotion, every situation that you would feel, all of the exercises, both somatically, journaling, that you would need to do after you say goodbye, because you do have to complete the grief cycle. And you have to trust that you're going to get something else in return. Like, how many boyfriends did you have before you met your partner? Like, how many friendships have you had before you met each other? Not every ending is necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes it's just making space for the right thing to come into your life. And if you stay stuck to a bad situation that's making you feel bad, all you're doing is investing in your life staying shitty, instead of like choosing to have a beautiful life that you created, that you deserve. Because everybody is a sacred being, and we do deserve to be treated with love and respect. Yeah.
Wow. I know.
I'm literally like, okay.
Well, let's do our final question.
I know.
So we have a question that we like to ask everyone at the end of our episode. What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given, or that you like to give?
I actually have two, because we're not running out of time or anything.
You're great. Go.
So the first one is something that my mom used to say to me, and I actually found out later, is a quote from Maya Angelou, and it is, believe people when they show you who they are. And then the second one is very similar, and it came from my Uncle Elston, and it is, past behavior is a really good indicator of future behavior. Yeah.
Mic drop.
Really? Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I would love, we've obviously referenced a course throughout the course of this podcast. We're holding it up if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, which is great.
It's a digital course that they can purchase, but you printed it off today so we could see it.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So it is like jam packed. Like, this is incredible. This looks incredible. Oh my gosh, look at you.
Oh, there I am.
I'm so happy. Yeah. I love it. So
Thank
cute.
you.
But if you can leave us with where we can find you, your website, where we can purchase your course, all of the things.
So my name is Madison Wawryk. You can find me at www.maddielikestomove.com. And then the course is maddielikestomove.com/boundarybabe. On YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, it's at Maddie Likes to Move. My course is opening on November 15th, and the first group launch will be January 1st, or at the January 2024. And you can always just send me an email, and I'll send you the information. I only take clients that I can talk to and feel out and make sure we're a really good fit for each other. This course is life-changing. It is the equivalent of a yoga teacher training or that type of intensity. And so you need to be committed. You need to want to come and change your life. And you need to be committed to being the happiest, most liberated, most vibrant version of yourself. And if you don't believe that you can be that, that's fine. I can help you with it. But just send me an email. Come talk to me. Even if you just have like this tiny inkling that you should, send me an email. Send me a text. My phone number is on my website. And yeah.
Amazing. We'll link it out all in the show notes.
Yes. Thank you so much for coming. I loved hearing from you. Like,
seriously,
I want you
that
to feel
story,
really confident in this podcast and feel really good about it.
Yes, you're a storyteller. So I think we were on the edge of our seats being like, and next? And next?
You ate a bat.
Yeah. I'm sorry to my family in advance if I brought shame to you.
Never. Thanks for coming, Maddie.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
Of course. Thank you everyone for joining us on this episode of the Her Podcast. If you want to follow along with us, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok at its.her.podcast. We can't wait to see you there.